Okay, we are live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have a very special guest, returning guest. This will be our seventh show. His name is Dr. Eric Karlstrom. Can you hit the mute button?
I'm sorry. Okay.
We're trying to figure out the audio, but there's a little bit of a reverb, so I think that we are echo. So I'll just be hitting the mute button while he's talking, and hopefully he'll hit the mute button while I'm talking. But our other shows we've done, which I will enumerate right here, are pretty interesting. I'll see if I can put some up, but I think our earliest show was 2021. We talked about psychotronics and gang stalking. We've also talked about targeted individuals. We've done the Macy conferences. We've done mass shootings, the Monarch Project, Program to Kill by David McGowan, McGowan. People can't seem to spit that name out these days. We also did Descent into Hell, CIA, MK Ultra Doctors, Scientists, Spies, and Politicians. And then one of my most listened to shows is Reinterpretation of Post-World War II American History in Light of MK, Black Ops, which is very true and well worth your time to listen. But he has just, if you're watching this on Rumble, X, or Rockfin, you will see his new article, which is the title of this show, which is Timeline to Beast System, Mind-Controlled Hive Mind, Psycho-Civilized Cyborg Slave Society. And we are going to talk about that today. And so welcome back to the show, Dr. Eric Karlstrom.
Thank you, William. It's great to be back and talking to you. Seems like we really have zeroed in on in our last shows and on this show into a particular kind of groove here, which I think is extraordinarily important. Obviously, I retired from a 30-year career as a geography professor. Physical geography and the actual soils and landforms and climate change are my field. In my retirement since 2011, I have just kind of turned myself loose on researching topics that I think are important to everybody. And and then I have 5 websites that I've used to kind of to compile this information. And they're basically free digital libraries like gangstalkingmindcontrolcults.com, which you have on the screen there. Also 911nwo.com. Also naturalclimatechange.org, which plays to my actual experience as a researcher in my career. And then also San Luis Valley Waterwatch.com and my music website here at Karlstrom.com. So I haven't gotten bored. I haven't stopped, exploring the world. This particular groove of topics that you and I have been able to talk about really leads me to this post, which I put together just in the last week or two. Basically, it's summarizing some of the main, most important points from my gangstalkingmindcontrolcults.com website, which now has 2,500 posts on it, by the way, many of which I've written myself. And my other one, 911nwo.com, which has got over 1,000 posts. So these are huge websites with lots of information. It's free to the public. I haven't needed to charge to this point. So I just keep working away, doing what I think retired professors should do. Now, this particular article, what I do is I string together mostly quotes from other researchers. And I had written an article in 2012. It took me a whole year because the subject is so grim and dark, called Mind Control, History and Applications, in which I read about 50 books on the subject, the best I could find, and basically did a literature review, which is the first step of any academic investigation. And I wrote about a 100-page article, which is under New World Religion up in the upper left. Thank you. You've got my subheadings there, and part 15 is I'm now titling this very same article. I've got 14 previous parts, and then this is so important that I've made this the 15th part, because what I'm coming to after all this research is that this is kind of a subtext which runs through many different fields and many operations and it's almost, there you go. No, that's the one before. That's 14. And then it should be right above that, I guess. Yeah, Timeline to the Beast System. That's this article, which I've just loaded up the last couple of days. And what spurred me back to this subject was I bought this book by Walter Boart, Operation Mind Control, Researcher's Edition. He put about 500 copies of this out in 1994. He could not find a publisher, obviously. It's got about 818 pages, lots of diagrams and references, and it's just the best thing I've found, telling us how we got to where we are today with these black top secret programs having to do with MK Ultra and all these post World War II mind control operations of the CIA and the military in particular. Operation Chatter in 1947 was a Navy operation, and then it was Bluebird, CIA in 1950, and then Artichoke in 1951, and then MK Ultra comes along in 1953. And this was a gigantic Manhattan Project of the mind that the military and the CIA was doing, and top secret. And they were spending over $1 billion a year doing this. Yeah, thank you very much. You've yeah, so I'm just using quotes, and this is coming from Dr. Colin Ross, who wrote a book, Bluebird, about Operation Bluebird. He's got the same book basically is out as CIA doctors. But yeah, virtually every leading psychiatrist in North America between the 1940s and 1970s was involved in some aspect of the CIA's mind control research. Think about that. For instance, Dr. Ewan Cameron, Scottish born, friend of John Rawlings Rees, the brigadier general who, after World War I, he's head of the British Army Psychological Warfare Department. He starts the Tavistock Clinic, and then he's a good friend of Ewan Cameron, who is one of the most notorious of the CIA MK Ultra doctors, who did MK Ultra Project 68, which has to do with so much torture and trauma to the brain of his unwitting patients who come in there trusting him. He puts them in a coma, under a drug-induced coma for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks. He, uses vast amounts of electroconvulsive therapy to their brain. Yeah, that's Dr. Ewan Cameron. And the reason I brought him up, it just has to do with that quote. This man, Scottish born, was head of the World Psychiatric Association, the Canadian Psychiatric Association, the American Psychiatric Association, and he was going for the Nobel Prize. But what he was doing in, quote, the sleep room, which was actually a torture chamber at the Ravenscrag building of McGill University, the Allen Memorial Institute for Neuroscience, or whatever it's called, he has a two-step process that he came up with out of MK Ultra Subproject 68, which was to depattern the mind of his poor victim patients. They just came in for something else because he had a good reputation, and he wound up erasing their minds. It's called depatterning. And then
we know this, just to interrupt, but we know this because a lot of the patients sued, and there's the inquest, and there's a really good book called Father, Son, and CIA, which is really easy to remember. His name is Harvey Weinstein. Not that Harvey Weinstein, but I've done an episode about that. I'll try to republish that or restream that. But we have all the facts about this guy. He literally used curare, which is like a paralyzing agent from like South America or something, on his victims. There really were victims. Crazy.
Yeah, he was a friend of William Sargent, who was another British psycho dog, crazy man, who wanted to make men better killers, And how do you make men better killers, for the British Empire? Well, you make a new man. You erase the old identity and you put a new one. So the first step is depatterning. There you go. There's William Sargent, and another friend of these other two guys, John Rawlings Rees and Ewan Cameron. So there's depatterning, and then there's psychic driving, And the second part of the process that Cameron used, I mean, this is just totally brutal. He had a lab assistant whose actual field was engineering, not medicine. And the lab assistant rigged up a kind of a football helmet arrangement with a tape recorder inside for the patients. And so they would get looped very, very, very negative messages. Your mother hates you. You're no good. You know, you're fat. You're ugly. You know, to kind of to traumatize the person so that they're no good. And then they put in the new identity with they reprogram the person. So what I have, we're right on target actually in terms of this topic. Okay, now this particular sub-project, about 150 sub-projects in MK Ultra 1953 to, well, it's still going. It's all still top secret. But this is one of the main things the CIA has been doing is take over the world, with mind control. And that's what the beast system is. Okay, this is going on starting 1957, sub-project 68, and then it goes to the early 60s. At the same time, basically, there's another sub-project, sub-project 119, by Dr. Saul B. Sells of Texas Christian University. And I guess I'll have to refer to my notes here. It's actually in the document there. Saul B. Sells, this goes 1959 to 1965. So they're at the same time. Now, if you put these two projects together, and this one has to do with the remote activation of the human test subject electronically. If you put these two together, you come up with basically what we have been calling the organized stalking electronic harassment program. It's a misnomer as usual, but they use words to cover and disguise what they're actually doing. So a word like gang stalking then is a word that is kind of a self-harm term that they would have come up with to describe this program, which is actually doing trying to do what you and Cameron was doing in the sleep room, which is to reprogram the mind through trauma and repetitive messages. And of course, the people who've been suffering from this have been suffering from this. They have used children, they have used citizens, involuntary test subjects, going right back to those very days of 1957, 1959. And in this article here in the Timeline to the Beast, I'm quoting what I would call targeted individuals. There's other names for us because I'm one now. So you get on the wrong side of the cryptocracy, the rule by secrecy. They go after you and they try to neutralize you. They try to kill you. So for the last 14 years, it's my battle has been, first of all, to survive the system. And as a professor, I'm kind of a little luckier than most because I can read and I can write. And so I've read many, many books about this now. And the more education you have about it, I think the more chance that you're going to be able to survive this heinous. They're trying to create a literal hell on Earth for people with these technologies, electromagnetic frequencies. Well, let me go down to 1959 here. And we'll take a look at Saul B. Sells, principal investigator. Okay, there's I don't know if you could, can you see my screen, William?
Nope, you have to add it to the StreamYard. So you go down to add, you go to present, share screen if you want to share your screen.
Well, let me see if I can do that. It might be worthwhile. Okay, so present.
You can just tell me where to go to on this article.
No, I've got it here. Okay. Share screen, and then share screen. Okay.
So it'll show up in the box underneath this.
And then says allow. Yes. Is that now sharing my screen? Well,
no, it won't. You'll see the box underneath the StreamYard stream once you share it. Once you share anything, really.
I see. Okay, share screen. Share screen. Allow StreamYard to see your screen. Allow. Uh-oh, it says the browser can't access your screen.
Yeah, you probably have the wrong browser.
Okay.
I can
Well, then,
access it for you. What do you want me to pull up?
yeah, okay, great. Yeah, I think if you just scroll down in
I'm at 1959 right here. That's where you want to be, right?
Yeah, well, okay, look at 1959 to 1965. Very good. That's it. Okay, the CIA's MK Ultra Subproject 119, Saul B. Sells, principal investigator, the study. And this is a professor with access. He had worked with the Air Force in data management as a computer scientist for 12 years going into this. So it's not like this guy came off the street. We can talk about his background too. But yeah, his project was called Interpretive Survey of Work Being Done in Psychophysiological Research and Instrumentation. The 5 goals of the project were, and I'll just read them off: bioelectric sensors. Well, that's a chip, like Elon is putting in our heads now. That's an implant. Bioelectric sensors or biosensors, sources of significant electrical potential and methods to pick up. Okay, so they had developed this back in the 50s. The brain to computer interface with MIT professors, with this guy and many, many others. This is very much a joint effort. Some of the brightest people in America, alas, and the world. Second one, B, recording. Okay, so they want to amplify these signals that are measuring the waves in your brain, notably at that time, most notably EEG or electroencephalogram, wavy pattern that our brains produce, which Dr. Norbert Wiener at MIT, who wrote the book on cybernetics, he was able to interpret these signals through what's called spectral analysis or Fourier analysis. So they're going to amplify the signal. They're going to record it. They're going to send it to a computer. Here in B, electronic tape and other multi-channel recording. Okay, C, analysis, uses the autocorrelator. Now, this is a computer that, again, Dr. Norbert Wiener, this brilliant MIT math professor who wrote the book on cybernetics, man-machine integrations, he invented this in 1955. And again, he did spectrum analysis, spectrum analyzers to interpret the EEG pattern, brain patterns, in 1955, along 12 different channels between the brain, different parts of the brain and the computer, and coordinate with automatic data processing equipment. Okay, so they were really advanced in the 50s, really, really advanced, more advanced, I think, than people can imagine. D, standardization of data for correlation with biochemical, physiological, and behavioral indices. Okay, they want to know all about you and measure it and record it and put it into a computer storage forever. And then, of course, then you get the whole thing where you have a library of different wavelengths, different signals given from the body when it's feeling this or when it's feeling that, when it's being tortured. You can measure those patterns, and then you can send that to somebody else. And that's exactly what they're doing with the targeted individuals. They're taking the patterns of given off by the brain or different parts of the brain, and then simply sending it to somebody else, and they're feeling the torture. No physical contact. They're not actually being tortured in the direct sense, but they are feeling the sensations as if they were tortured. This is what it is to be a targeted individual, to be remotely tortured. And so the last part of my title is TIs as guinea pigs. So they've been using non-consensual civilians to test these systems since the 50s, and we'll get to that. We'll prove that in a minute. And then finally, the last one is the most telling, E, techniques of activation of the human organism, techniques of activism of the human organism by remote electronic means. Okay, now picture a little marionette, with the arms and the legs going up and down. This is where we are, and this is where we have been for a long time. These technologies have been developed. The technologies to completely control people's moods, their emotions, their thoughts, and their bodily movements. Now, this is, for anybody who believes that, life is a God-given gift and that we have free will. Well, what they've done is perhaps the greatest crime against humanity in history. And of course, now with Elon Musk, for instance, this guy with autism, who can control SpaceX with 40 to 50,000 low Earth orbit satellites, because satellites are part of this, as they're sending and receiving the signals with the satellite. And then supercomputers are hooked up, and AI. He's got an AI outfit. He was co-founded OpenAI. Now he's got one XAI. And then, of course, he's got his Neuralink chip that he wants to put in people's brains. And he's got a number of other companies. This guy, this one guy with that system could control everybody in the world, because this is the beast system, I believe. And yet our president, the buddies with Elon Musk, right?
Elon Musk is his right-hand man. They're together all the time. He just follows around Trump all the time.
Yeah, well, Elon Musk and those two probably the most dangerous people in the world right now, if you ask me, because they have this technology and they're not talking about it. And of course, one of the first things that Trump did was he said, okay, we're going to have $500 billion for starters, and we're going to give it to our buddies over here, Larry Ellison and Sam Altman, and they're going to have the new Stargate. There's an old Stargate too, which is worth talking about. But they have a way of recycling these names to keep everybody confused. And this new Stargate is going to be part of this process. So what they're looking at, I think, is enslaving humanity, and not only enslaving, but redesigning. Like Cameron's experiments, we're gonna de-pattern the old and we're gonna create the new. We're gonna have a bio-robot slave. So this is, we have to talk seriously about how do we survive and thrive in an environment which is so completely with individuals in power who have such awesome technology to enslave us. And
I think the enslavement is so good we don't think we're slaves. Actually, I think like if they take half your money or whatever through taxes and steal it all, you're a slave. Like you are stupid to think that you're free in America. Like the facts. And Trump is surrounded by technocrats just everywhere. Even at his inauguration, he had all the tech heads sitting right behind him. Not like industrialists or anything. It was all tech luminaries, including Musk and all the people from Apple, Google, etc.
Yeah, these guys are the most dangerous people in the world by far, if you ask me, and scary because they have a vision. They have a vision. And, that vision, as we know, is to reduce the human population and then enslave the rest, to so that they can become gods, right? It's like the Old Testament. You shall not surely die. You shall be as gods. Well, these are the guys that are going for that because they don't want to die because they know they're going to hell, in my opinion, and I know I have to dance around certain topics, but they have a belief system. This group of people have the same belief system.
It's the mechanistic view of man that we're just robots and Darwinianism and all that stuff. Like Elon Musk CRISPR'd his own child. This child that he had with this floozy or whatever, they like literally CRISPR'd him. Like we don't know the details of it, but this is like tampering. And I don't know how many kids he's got. He's like polyamorous or whatever. But this is a different view of things. This is not a traditional man-woman marriage type person. So, I mean, there's a lot of questions about that guy, Elon.
Oh yes, we could go into that. His mother's a witch. His grandfather was a Canadian who was very much behind the first kind of group that wanted this technocracy to happen. So he was groomed in this very dark. These are Satanists. Let's be honest. They're Satanists, and they now believe in the human control of human evolution. And this is what Dennis Bushnell, member of the same tribe, who's head of NASA's science, principal science investigator. He wrote in the 2001 NASA war document, we're in charge of evolution now. We have human-directed human evolution. And, I'm happy with God's system. I think, God is great. Look what he gave us. I do, as an earth scientist, I do believe 4.5 billion years is, the approximate age of the earth. So I don't go with the 6,000 year thing or the 6 days thing as maybe as a metaphor. But, these guys want to redo everything. In fact, they have a Hebrew word called tikkun olam, which means reinvention of the world. And that's what they're doing. They're reinventing the world, and that's what they're all about, and that's what they've been all about. So if you look deeply into this subject, you'll find their fingerprints all over it. Let me go back and talk a little bit about a little bit of more Saul B. Sells, and then we'll get to a person who was affected by this at the same time. Dr. Saul B. Sells, principal investigator, moved to Texas Christian University after a decade at the Air Force School of Aviation Medicine at Randolph Field, having worked as a statistician for the government during World War II. He founded the Institute of Behavioral Research at Texas Christian University and also worked for the Office of Naval Research, NASA, and Air Force. All these guys are in on this and have been since the get-go, to an enormous extent. So as a statistician, he studied great amounts of data to statistically and find patterns and ways to predict man's behavior. He tabulated the importance of hundreds of environmental factors to man's behavior. And then I make the comment here that we can speculate that in the modern world, data is the new gold, and NSA is after big data or metadata. And this, I believe, all part of the same thing. The more data they can get, the more control they can wield over all aspects of human life and life in general. So I believe that they want to extend these technologies to track, target, and activate everyone electromagnetically, unless we, the people, can wake up and say, no, thank you. In fact, you should be in jail. In fact, we're going to put you in jail. It's like whatever happened to manhood. If your life and the life of your entire your nation and your family and everything you hold sacred is threatened, with lions and tigers and whatever, you step up, or at least our ancestors did, and took care of the situation and survived. Now we have a threat that is exponentially greater than the threats faced by Pleistocene man, Ice Age man, and this is it.
You can see the data stuff happening right now in the kill box in Gaza. They are using Palantir to target people, murder people with AI. They've already killed like 7 famous chefs there who are helping people. That's the model for the future, guys. Literal Skynet, Terminator type stuff, but it's all drones from the sky. So if you're living in an urban area with a grid that can be mapped and traced and tracked, this could be turned on you. Like I'm not too scared, but we already went through the whole kill box thing of COVID-2 anyway, which was 4 or 5 years ago. So you're seeing it rolled out, the technocratic stuff. Like it's funny to watch some of these commentators like the technocracy is on the horizon. We're over the horizon, guy. The horizon point is way past. You're deluding yourself.
Well, I totally agree with everything. This is why I really enjoy our conversations, William. But I don't agree. Okay, Ray Kurzweil, one of the same tribe, who's been under this, transhumanism, artificial intelligence, singularity jag since the 60s. So this is a long-term plan. And Elon, they're all saying, okay, we have to merge with AI to survive now, AI is just a bunch of algorithms, people. Long mathematical equations that can be accessed very quickly, that can, do this and do that and the other. The human brain, in my opinion, is far superior. Again, we're made by God. These guys are Satanists, and they're harnessing the tools of mathematics and computers and chips and whatnot. But I think they're going to go down in flames. I think this is like the wings of Icarus. They're flying to the sun. They want to be gods. They want to live forever, and they want to enslave the rest of us. I do believe there's a God in heaven. I think these guys are going down in flames, and I pray that will happen soon, because they're gonna damage a lot of people. But so, in other words, I would not be buffaloed by their rhetoric, because they will say anything to accomplish their goal. And they've proven that time and time again. So if they can make you believe that this is inevitable, that AI is going to be so powerful that the only way we can survive is if we take the chip, Neuralink chip in our head and let Elon control us like a marionette, turn us off when he wants or when the banks want or whatever. This is just not true. These guys are professional con men. But anyway, going back to
all those guys, by the way, a lot of those technocrats who are around now are surrounding Trump are technical sales guys. They are good salesmen. Yes. They're always nudging people. You can watch Teal talk or Musk. This is inevitable. They're predicting it because that's where their money is, and they've done this for decades. And so you have to see them, part of them, as selling their tech to you. Like you said, it's inevitable. It's going to be us, but they're going to provide it. They're going to provide the benefit to you and make money off of it.
Yes, and it's a little disconcerting or way misconcerting that the Pentagon has chosen to gift these amazing technologies to this group of people. For instance, Palantir does what, what's the name of total information awareness that was coming out right after 9/11. They had a new branch of government that was going to spy on everybody and know what everybody's doing. And who was the guy that John Poindexter from the Iran-Contra? I mean, these guys are just total criminals. It's a RICO conspiracy, basically. But the Pentagon has handed these incredible technologies that DARPA and others and all these Air Force and military people have put together over all these decades. They handed it to these billionaires, or the billionaires are becoming billionaires by having these technologies. So the Pentagon is definitely in the loop on this. But let's go back to the next. I think it's the next entry in the timeline here, 1959, because this deals with a targeted individual, and this is coming out of Operation Mind Control, researcher's edition by Walter Boart that I talked about. He has about 6 or 7 pages of testimony from this very, very brilliant man who himself became a psychologist. And, he would have dealt with some of the top elites in America. So he was in that category. But until he was something like 42, he was under mind control, did not realize that his mind had been fragmented. He was fragmented into a number of subaltern personalities through torture, etc. So he says in this book, he's been a slave. He's been a targeted individual since birth. But here are the landmarks and this is how it fits in with, I think, Saul B. Sells and Dr. Ewan Cameron. He says, at age 12, a targeted individual since birth, Glenn Nichols was informed he had a hearing problem and was implanted with a temporary radio receiver and told it was a hearing aid. At 15, 1962, see, I'm 75, these dates mean something to me. At 59, I was 10 years old, So, I mean, people around me, would have been going through this. Some people, these are top secret crimes is what they are. That's national security state, man. National security, we can't talk about that. At age 15, 1962, Nichols was secretly, surreptitiously is the word they use, implanted with miniaturized radio receiver placed in his ear canal. This produced very low volume subliminal messages to control him. Nichols' realizations of these devices in his ears were always erased with torture, drugs, and electricity. Okay, going back to Ewan Cameron, the whole business of trauma-based mind control to compartment the mind and place amnesia barriers between the subaltern personalities that have been created, and then use codes, cues, and triggers to actually treat the human brain like a computer. And this is what the intelligence agencies were doing post-World War II. And as it turns out, the Nazis were doing this during World War II, of course, at the concentration camps. But the Germans apparently were one culture in which this kind of thing goes back maybe 12 generations in elite families, like the Illuminati, the Bavarian Illuminati. How do you weaponize your children so that they will, have all these different identities that you can control? One's going to be, super smart. One's going to be a Satanist. One's going to be a Christian minister. One's going to be whatever, sex slave. One's going to be a courier. One's going to be an assassin. So the CIA figured out how to make thousands of these subaltern personalities. I've digressed. Okay, but this is what was all done in the 40s and 50s.
I just actually had somebody called I had a guest. Her name was Rike from Germany, and the title of the book was Illuminati in Germany. And she had tons of altars, and all kinds of crazy stuff that is scarcely believable. But there's clearly like these cults. There's one global huge cult.
Yes.
And I think she was part of it, like underground networks, traveling, going to the Queen of Sweden. But her stories overlap with other survivor stories. And there's validation, at least at some parts of it. And so it is an interesting. A lot of people don't know, because the Illuminati started in Bavaria. It was Ingolstadt. But it had a big influence on that time. They were very much more elite. It was aristocrats. They were involved in the French Revolution, and they infiltrate a lot of other secret societies. So they're almost like a secret society within a secret society.
Yeah, in fact, in the Council of Wilhelmsbad in 1782, Illuminati was founded in 1776 by Adam Weishaupt for the Rothschild family, in cooperation with the elite of the time in that area, the very, very wealthy elite, including the Sanhedrin, I believe, who is kind of the judges of the Hebrew faith, were in on this plan to take over the world in 1776. And then there was a courier that was sending plans for the French Revolution to France, struck by lightning. Those plans were recovered by governments, and then the Illuminati, Bavaria, tried to shut them down. But what happened was, in 1782, at the Council of Wilhelmsbad, the Illuminati kingpins, like Adam Weishaupt, managed to fuse themselves with the largest secret society around, which is the Masons, and then put in the top degrees. So the Illuminati degrees are the top degrees of Masonry, and Masonry has carried forth this, and all of the different degrees of Masonry are based on the Jewish Kabbalah, which is this system of Babylonian black magic that the old Pharisees got from their quote unquote captivity in Babylon. So this is the most potent form of black magic in the world. So this is why Satanism keeps cropping up in these programs. Satanism is an integral part of these things. It is used in the trauma-based mind control. It is satanic ritual abuse that is used, which can again be traced back to this Bavarian Illuminati. And this is how they raised their own kids. And when the German Nazi the Gehlen organization was a third of the SS, was the spy agency of the Nazis that spied on the Russians. That was grafted in total into the new CIA in 1947 when the CIA was formed. So 1947.
They're uncovering more information, Eric, about connections between Himmler and Dulles, who started MK Ultra. Like it's becoming like, we know Dulles was in Switzerland, but Dulles was involved in his brother in taking all this money that the Germans stole SS in contact with SS, and taking the money out of the country, and then the war ended, and all that money was repatriated back to Germany through friends of like Sullivan and Cromwell. Like, these are facts. Like, it's not a conspiracy theory. Like, this is stuff that people are researching, and these are factual things. This woman who I had, Rike from Germany, she would go to Wewelsburg, which is the still extant castle of the SS.
Well, and then you get into you get some Christian ministers, and I've researched this because I'm very curious and interested in this, that, would say, okay, Germany was the Holy Roman Empire, through the Middle Ages. And many believe, and the kind of the fundamentalist Christians would believe, that the throne of Satan was there. And the throne of Satan then would have moved to Israel in 1948 when that was formed. That's what he says. I don't know about the throne of Satan, but I think it's quite possible, because we are dealing with very, very black stuff here. And in terms of Himmler, there's a whole chapter called Himmler's Guinea Pigs in Operation Mind Control. And Walter Boart makes the point that between 1927 and 1941, which is in between World War I and World War II in Germany. Really, we had the forerunner of what became Project Monarch in the United States, which is the program that's creating all these Manchurian candidate assassins and sex slaves, like Marilyn Monroe and Kathy O'Brien and Susan Bryce Taylor. Susan Ford is her real name, and a great many Paul Bonacci of the Franklin cover-up. These are Monarch victims who are victims of this kind of programming done on military bases. So what seems to have happened is that this ancient German tradition of torturing your kids, which of course includes raping them, because that causes dissociation of the mind, and then the alters can be split off and trained up to be different identities. This ancient kind of wicked, evil system was adopted by our military intelligence agencies right about that time, 1947, or right about that, and then it was kind of put underground in the military and with corporations, and move forward more scientifically. And a lot of these sub-projects then are to take that very system of Himmler's guinea pigs and make it more potent. So going back to this poor guy, Glenn E. Nichols, whose life was totally ruined by these guys. He says at 20 years of age in 1967, Nichols was surgically implanted with a miniature radio receiver and transmitter behind the right ear canal next to his eardrum. He was told he hurt his ear playing football. Over the next 20 years, 1967 to 87, this receiver transmitter, which is called a transceiver, sends and receives like a radio, was replaced a couple times. At about 23 years old, 1970, Nichols had an EEG, electroencephalogram, transmitter implanted in his brain now. Okay, so you talk about Elon's Neuralink. Well, they were doing this in 1970 and was informed that they use biomedical telemetry. That's your telehealth. Biomedical telemetry. It's also teletorture, by the way, if you're a TI. Biomedical telemetry and computers to read the EEG. So you got supercomputers, you got satellites, you got electromagnetic frequencies, and they know what all of them do, and they know how to interpret them, and they know how to send them and receive them, and they can put this frequency in your brain and affect your mood and your thoughts. They can read your thoughts. The thought reading devices happened, and you can go through this article and find when these things came along. Okay, and then about the age of 33, 1980, an electrode was inserted into his nostril. At age 42, 1989, Nichols began to realize, finally, he had massive memory loss and was the victim of mind control, torture, and slavery. Calls himself a slave, recalling thousands of conditioning sessions and abusers. That's what it's all about, is abuse. They just abuse the hell out of you and hope you'll die. They want to break your will with insults and abuse, and it's just like that football helmet that this guy Rosenthal, who was the assistant of Ewan Cameron, rigged up for those poor patients up in Canada. And okay, so this guy Nichols says they read every thought. This is 1989. Made continual, bizarre, distracting comments. Give constant subliminal commands. They could do this, folks, and use high-pitched sounds against me every moment. They use a combination of extremely demented, vulgar, heinous, and satanic ranting. That's typical. Then alternate this with informing me of the details of thousands of days of experience for which I have had complete amnesia. They have been controlling and torturing me for my entire life. The perpetrators increased their subliminal broadcast to a conscious level and have been using the speakers and the EEG transmitter to torture me continuously since June 1991. Isn't that amazing? And then he goes on to say, they tell me they are the Illuminati or the Freemasons or, quote, the Brotherhood, or they might say they're the CIA or the NSA or the U.S. Navy intelligence or U.S. Army intelligence, U.S. Air Force intelligence. Actually, they're all involved. Or a particular corporation like Rockwell International or Lockheed Corporation or Northrop Grumman or Exxon. And they are all involved. I've read enough accounts from TIs to know they're all involved, as well as many, many others. Probably each description contains some truth. I just think of them as, quote, the organization. Walter Bohr refers to them, among other things, as the Council, a very small elite group that is above all governments, controls all government, much like John Kennedy announced, in his 1961 address to the press about this secret network that was really in control of things. And he was going to warn the American people, he said, before they were able to enslave us. Well, he had a good heart anyway, they killed him for that. But what I'll stop there. I'm sure you might have a thought or two, William.
Yeah, no, I mean it's an incredible story. I mean it was all suppressed, a lot of this stuff. So
yeah,
it's hard to find out about it. Yeah.
Yeah, but they have all these top secret projects. You call them black projects. Operation Moonstruck, I've got in there, 1952. Again, it's military intelligence. If we scroll back on our screen to 1952, we see Project Moonstruck, 1952, CIA, electronic implants in brain and teeth. They were implanting kids and adults in America secretly with implants in 1952. I was 3 years old. They might have implanted me. I don't know. Well, the other purpose, long-range targeting. Okay, they're going to track these people, and they're going to target them. 1952, folks. 3, implanting during surgery and surreptitiously. That's where I got that word, secretly, during abduction. Oh, abduction. Was it be the little green men, or would it be the Air Force? I think it's the Air Force. And this explains, I believe, the military abductions. And I think this whole alien thing has always been a blind or a screen or a cover story to protect this. And that idea has borne out by many, many others. Paul Bonacci, this poor sex slave who was kidnapped from his home at the age of 4 or 5 in Kansas, and then went on to service George W. Bush and other high-ups, George H.W. Bush and other high-ups in the first Bush administration in the Franklin cover-up situation. He says, hey, if we didn't talk about little green men, they'd kill us, So he tells a lot about what happened to him. And he has been interviewed by quite a few people, like psychologists, the good psychologists, trying to help people. Okay, number 4, the frequency range that they're using for electronic frequencies, high frequency to extremely low frequency. And they can use a high frequency signal carried on a low frequency signal. So you have carrier waves, and then you have the information it's like radio. And then you have pulsed frequencies. And in microwaves, the most dramatic effects are not associated with heat. There are different wavelengths of microwaves, and of course, your microwave at home will heat up your coffee by heating the water molecules. But there's also non-thermal effects, non-thermal biological effects of microwaves that the Russians, the Soviets, and the United States were studying for many, many decades. And these are the ones that are really, really dangerous. In fact, there was more or less a Cold War. I think this was the axis of the Cold War, actually. See, the nukes that had already been discovered, the top people say, hey, we don't want to incinerate the whole planet. So we have to figure out invisible forms of warfare, invisible weapons. And so this is what they're doing. These are invisible weapons. You can't see them, you can't hear them, but you can cause a heck of a lot of damage.
What's that document that's like of specious validity? It's like Secret Weapons for Silent Wars or whatever.
Yeah, silent weapons for secret war. Yeah, that was a document that's found in an IBM, Xerox machine, I think in the 80s. But it was supposedly referring to a meeting that had occurred in the 1950s, and I think it was, it's basically how we're going to take over the world with engineering. Assume everything is a big black box. You don't really understand everything, but you can control it by, inputs, outputs, feedback loop. You put in the inputs, and then you measure the outputs, and then you feed the outputs back in, or whatever else as in the feedback loop. And this is kind of standard engineering for, systems. And this became a whole huge field. I mean, there's millions, trillions of dollars have been spent on all this stuff since the 50s. And as you say, it's been a well-kept secret. So yeah, that is another document which I think it really does truthfully tell what their plans are. And I also think, and Board also agrees, that this report from Iron Mountain, which happened in the 60s under Herman Kahn of the tribe, also with the Hudson Institute, which prescribed the direction of not only America, but the world. Boy, it's come true, including things like socially oriented Hunger Games. Well, what is organized stalking if not a socially oriented Hunger Game? You turn society into predators and prey. And this is what we have too, although the media is not likely to talk about it. I mean, I'm being stalked by other Americans, being stalked by British, Mexicans. I mean, evidently they're being either commandeered mentally by a very powerful system which can take over their minds, or else they're actually, part of a cult that does this stuff for fun. And I think that's the case. I think both are the case, actually. I think there's many ways to get people to turn on each other. You can just lie and say, okay, that guy's a pedophile or that woman's a prostitute or whoever, and then we got to get them, and there's an FBI, man, we don't have quite enough on this suspect to arrest him, but we need your help in the investigation. Would you kindly put this through the wall radar device in your home so we can spy on him? And by the way, we'll give you a new roof. And
right. There's so much money. You can look at USAID as an example of how the money comes out of the taxpayer, goes out to these smaller entities within the government, and then goes to NGOs or other covers or cutouts, intel cutouts, and then it happens. And then that's a form of washing. So it's washing the money, and it's also washing the connection. So many, the CIA has done that, and all these intel agents do that, like reflexively, like that's just their nature. So it's kind of like silly. So many of these, I mean, so much of this stuff is artificial and fake. So they can do this. They can get people killed. I think there's actually a government program to go after anybody on the independent media. I mean, I don't think that's totally a possibility. They want control over everybody.
I came out with my 911nwo.com website. I knew right away 9/11 was an inside job. And, as people from my generation would, we've seen the government in action. We saw it during the Vietnam War. And so, you get on a list, and they, potential terrorist threat with Department of Homeland Security and the FBI, and now the fusion centers, and now local cops. And, pretty soon it's your neighbors. And, this is a gigantic Stasi system, in fact, modeled on the Stasi. Who came over from East Germany, but Marcus Wolf, the head of this East German Stasi, to form Department of Homeland Security, which of course was formed right after 9/11.
He was a consultant.
Yeah.
And the stories of Eastern Germany, I think we talked about in one of our earlier talks, like it was total, everybody was ratting out everybody else. So everybody had files. They had files on every citizen, and everybody was an informant. Like every other person was an informant. So the government was just getting blackmail material on everybody. So like the notion like only elites are blackmailed is ridiculous. If it's East Germany, you all have blackmail material.
I think that's come here now, America. It is that system, and not only that, it is also the Vietnamese, the CIA's Phoenix program, which was used to target, torture, and murder quote unquote dissidents or civilians in Vietnam who were supporting the Viet Cong. And that became the organizational model then of Department of Homeland Security. If you read Douglas Valentine's book, The CIA as Organized Crime, How Covert Operations Corrupt America and the World, written in 2017, and he nailed it. I mean, he wrote the book on the Phoenix program. And like I say, they have a way of recycling these names so people will forget about the earlier, more horrible programs. But the Phoenix program is one of the most horrific things you could possibly read about. I mean, they never let one of the guys they're going after in the civilian population are just teachers and politicians and farmers, and anybody who might have influence in the community was targeted, and then they were interrogated. And of course, that's a euphemism for torture. And they used the MK Ultra results in their Kubark manual, the CIA did, which came out in 1963. That's their enhanced interrogation or torture manual. And they updated that in 1985. This is what the CIA has been doing all over the world, all over Latin America, all over the Middle East. This is how the American empire extends itself: through torture, through terror, through murder. You might as well call the United States Torture, Murder, Terror, Inc., because that is what it is. And now it's all come home with this Department of Homeland Security. And like you say, people are ratting each other out. If you see something, say something, and, you get, I don't know, brownie points, with the police or whatever. Or, if you're a criminal, the police will make a deal with you and you go, stalk this guy. And there's there must be millions, many, many millions in America that are driving around, evidently obeying orders that come to them on their cell phone app, or maybe right directly to their mind, like you saw in the Truman Show. I don't know. Maybe these people are already totally controlled because they act like zombies. There's like a zombie army of civilians. And a lot of them are bottom feeders. But I can see, having been now stalked for 11 years, that the special forces and the ex-military and ex-cops and active military and active cops are kind of at the upper levels of the actual execution of this. So we have a system already in place by which the many can go against the one. It's the most cowardly, despicable bullying you can imagine when you see what they're actually doing. But see, it's compartmented. So they're told to go do this. Okay, I'll tailgate that guy, or cut him off here, or say this, or knock his shoulder, or whatever. They don't see the larger effect of the fact that this particular targeted individual is getting harassed like that every day, multiple times, and that the program is psychologically designed to break down, again, back to the camera thing, break down the individual's identity. With me, they've had a hard nut, so I'm 6'1". I've climbed mountains all over the world as a rock climber. I was a cross country ski racer. I'm not a small guy, and I'm not dumb. So, I've survived, but they want to keep constant stress and pressure on the individual so that the cortisol will build up and your heart will stop. This is very, very evil. And it's going on, paid for by taxpayer money and being carried out by Americans en masse. So I'm kind of, torn now whether I want to keep trying to help America, because so many of them have turned on me individually. But
they have to wake up. They have to wake up. They have to wake up like they've been hypnotized. And I've repeated that kind of on some of my social media that I haven't been censored of, is that this whole zombie thing is like, if you're going down, you can get your programming done every night if you turn your TV on and it flashes at you. And literally, you can see the whole hive mind of the society change overnight after a night of programming. It's literal mind control programming. So if you watch TV or TV news, there's a puppeteer behind that. And you should be terrified of your television. You really should.
And
Eric, hold on, Eric. We are at the hour mark. I got to wrap this up. Is there anything that you'd like to add, or where can people find your work? You mentioned your websites. Maybe you can talk about that. I'll put a link to this article in the show notes as well.
Well, I would ask people to read through this, because to know is to take the first step towards being able to respond appropriately. If you don't know that this is the world you're living in, and this has been the world for the since World War II, and you don't know who's behind it and what they've got in terms of weaponry, if you don't know who your enemy is, you're defenseless. So I would suggest, and of course, 70% of these victims historically are women. So a lot of the people that are stepping up and doing the research are women, because they're coming out of hell, or trying to come out of hell. They're trying to place TIs in hell. And if you, the American people, don't step up and try to stop this program and hold the leaders accountable for the crimes they're committing, it's going to come to you. It's just a matter of time. So my whole thing is that this is probably the beast system. And it's been going on incrementally. It's been developing since the 50s and the 40s. And it's been under the control of our intelligence and military, as well as our top scientists and psychologists and medical people, to the extent to which we have been betrayed by the people that we have placed our trust in. It's sad, but it's true. And you won't know that unless you're, kind of knuckle down, turn off the TV. And I would suggest, William, get away from your cell phone as much as you can, because that device is a weapon. They can spy on you with that thing. They can locate you with that thing. That is the gateway That is the gateway for all telehealth and teletorture. They have access to you through frequencies with your cell phone and with the apps. So get away from the cell phone. We've got to figure out ways to combat
Delete
this.
as many apps as you can. Basically pare it down to the fewest apps on your phone as possible.
Or and don't carry that thing with you. Maybe hold it, about 10 feet away, or drag it on a sled or something, a little wagon. The frequencies themselves can cause you cancer. And so I think this world has been built around us deliberately. We can find out who did it. We can find out when they did it. And that's what this article is about. I would implore people to wade through it, to learn what world they're living in. They don't know. If you're gang stalking somebody else, I mean, I think you're rightfully going to hell. You're putting other people in hell. Gang stalking is torture. It is murder or attempted murder. It is treason.
Here's the thing: we know from the past that there are people out there will sell their fellow countrymen out for $1, like literally $1. I'm not saying for dollars. So they find these people, they find them out there, and they'll do it.
Yeah.
So
That's
you have
right.
to really watch out for sociopaths, like a psychological analysis of people. It's very important. Eric, thanks for coming on the show. I'll put a link to everything. And until next time, everybody, thanks for listening. Please share the show if you can. The title of this one, our 7th show, is Timeline to Beast System, Mind Controlled Hive Mind, Psycho-Civilized Cyborg Slave Society. Dr. Karlstrom.